In a greenhouse or a high tunnel, it is really remarkable to see how the soil just disappears. And I have raised beds, and in my raised beds, which are 10 by 4, I have soil that's a foot deep. And every year, the plants use up the nutrients, and by the next spring, that's about 4 inches deep. And so I have to rejuvenate the soil and bring in my compost, my whatever. Sometimes we clean the barn lot out, and we have a pile where we do, Larry turns it over, and we also have a chicken composting camp. Then we bring that in the spring, and we dump it on top of each of the raised beds, and that creates a lot of volume, and it also rejuvenates the soil with the compost. And this is what I used as the edge, not knowing whether it was a good idea or not, but it really turned out great, because just cutting these in long strips using pipes that were left over from different projects, and this has been turned out really well. It's a foot tall, and so every year we have to put new compost in it. This is one that just has a compost it added. We took the irrigation and hung them up on our trellises, and that allows us to be able to work the soil in. So this one is the one that has not had anything but just the compost put into the ground. What we do is we dig a hole and dig it down, and we just mix it like this. We do have a mantis tiller that sometimes we use in it, but basically grandchildren and different ones just turn it over until the compost is worked in with the soil that's below. And the soil is nice and soft and full of nutrition. So this is how we prepare the bed, and then of course that is all smoothed up, and then we each one of these beds, when they get ready, we start planting our cold weather crops in here about March. Okay, this is when the compost has just been piled in, irrigation has been lifted, the compost has been piled in here. Then the first step that we would do is start turning over the soil. And compost, again, I'll reiterate, is saving your kitchen scraps. It's gathering all the bags of leaves that you can when you go to town, and people have them out by the curb, so we just stop and ask them if we can have their leaves, and then we sit them in the bags, poke holes in it, let it rain on them. In the fall or in the spring, those create mats that we use either for composting by putting it in with the chickens and letting them scratch it all up into little fine pieces, or we will use it as mats. This is a gold mine. We go in the fall, we go around town and pick up what leaves, and people come by and dump them in here. This is a place that we just pile them for the winter, and the kids romp on them and play and sometimes poke holes in them, which is all right because the moisture gets in on the leaves. And what we do is we take these sacks of leaves, they become quite heavy with the watered down leaves, and this is what we use for mulch in our garden. Our garden has furrows in it. We put newspapers down, and then we take flat, padded down leaves, and we place over the newspaper and end up covering all but where the plants are. It keeps the water in, it puts nutrients into the soil, and this is just wonderful. The next spring we can just till it under, and it's made compost by then, and it's wonderful. This is an example of what the ground looks like when you've had leaves on top of it and the plants died down. This could just be turned under, and this kind of shows how when it's matted together it keeps the weeds from growing. So this is what we do to stir, and you can see that some of this soil way down below mixes with this, and It's easy shoveling because it's lightweight compost. There is no better gold to give a farmer than good compost. And good compost is something that you can make in various forms. I throw all of my lettuces and apple peels and apple cores and stuff in a worm farm that I have in the house. And the worm casting is very nutritious to your plant soil. Basically, it's worm manure. One of the requirements to have a good high tunnel or greenhouse is to have a good pad in which you build your greenhouse or high tunnel. What we did was the county was putting on digging out ditches, and they asked if they could pile it on our property, which we said yes, and it would. So we used that underneath to make this pad in the greenhouse. Big mistake, because it was full of Johnson grass and rocks. So what has happened is it took us a whole year before we could use the greenhouse or the high tunnel, and it took us a whole year of running our fingers through the ground and pulling out massive amount of Johnson grass. This is the first, how the bed first looks. Then secondly, we have it where we have stirred it up 2 or 3 times to get it all soft and all the big pieces dissolved down in and crumbled in. And then you have your multiple grandchildren come in and you let them play in the soil, and he's really good at digging up and turning it over. And they dig and dig and dig, and that helps it some more. And after you smooth that all down and they have done their work, then you move to putting down the irrigation. And thank you, Asa. And you put the irrigation down, and it's ready for planting. And then yesterday, some of the older grandkids came in, and they planted this with onions and radishes, lettuce, and carrots, and beets. So they have, this is a finished bed. And then right here, you can see that we have a lot to plant. This is what I've raised in the house starting in January, the last of January and February. And I'm getting ready to do another planting of lettuce, and then the warm weather crops inside, because we get cold weather and frosts, so I have to be careful about not putting tender plants out. In my 10 by 4 raised bed, I have onions planted there. I have cherry bell radishes. Then I have loose leaf lettuce, salad lettuce. And then there's a row of carrots and a row of bull blood beets. And that's in that bed. This right here are different things. I have early Jersey cabbage, red cabbage, and Wetham broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and this is a kale called premium kale. I've never had that before, but that will be planted in the greenhouse, but a lot of it will be planted outside. These are cold weather crops right here. And then over here, we have curly kale, dates, and spinach and chard. The spinach, I've planted all of it. And this is a red chard. Never had red chard before, so I'm going to try that. And right up there is the snowball cauliflower. This is snowball cauliflower right here. And then this is cauliflower, a different cauliflower. And then some lettuce. There's big Boston, and then salad. And I use these I use plastic forks, and I break them in half, and I write on them, and then it tells, I get 2 of them out of it. So those work really well because it doesn't seem to fade, or, but I can use those and then identify my plants. Here's another bed. This bed has cedar posts on it that somebody was remodeling, and so that worked out well. This is my center row that is about 50 foot long, 4 foot wide. And I have planted here all my early crops, and I will have some, well, like kale and broccoli and some of those that will last through next winter. Here is an example. It looks pitiful right now, but actually this is a dinosaur kale, and I'll get seed off of it. The second year that you have plants, usually the seed like carrots, kale, you'll get seed from them. And then here I have different assortments of lettuces along the side. Right here is my little spinach patch. I have more down there. And then here's some kale. And here's a red chard. And then as you go down, there's carrots and beets. And this is where people can come in, and I send my kids out to pick a salad for supper. I had the college students come out and just pick a great big bowl of salads fresh from the garden, go in and wash it, and they mixed it all up what they picked and had a delicious, delicious fresh salad straight from the garden. This is our chicken composting camp. It's what we call it, the composting camp. And this is where we will throw all kinds of garden trash and things from the kitchen scraps. So these are roosters that people have given us when people buy chickens for their kids, and then they can't have a rooster in their housing. So they bring them down to us from different towns, and we put them to work. What they do is, when we first built this, it's got a top on it and sides, and it's got a little rooster house. And then they come out and spend the day scratching up the soil. This was very, very tall. Even had some Johnson grass in it, as you can see, which they will kill because they'll keep the green off the top totally pecked off, and pretty soon that won't even be. But they end up digging and scratching and mixing it up, and soon this will be where I can come out and shovel out the soil to use in my raised beds or my pots.